Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's go ahead and get started with Week 37's Word Nerd Wednesday. Now, in an extended comfort read, we'll be spending the rest of Series 5's Third Age Thursdays enjoying festivities and friends at a long-expected party, which has meant all sorts of new words to look at on Word Nerd Wednesdays. Baggins, Bag-End, Sackville Baggins, Hamfast Gamgee, the Gaffer, Nasturtians, and now, well, how about some of the family names of those in attendance at the party? Now, when we get to the signal for supper, which I don't think we're actually going to get to this week, we'll read that there were many Bagginses and Boffins and also many Tooks and Brandybucks. There were various Grubbs, relations of Bilbo Baggins's grandmother, and various Chubbs, connections of his Took grandfather, and a selection of Burrowses, Bolgers, Bracegirdles, Brockhouses, Goodbodies, Hornblowers, and Proudfoots. Now, we've either already touched on, or will eventually, the Bagginses, Tooks, and Brandybucks. Today it's time to look at those less familiar names, and we'll just go in order here, so that means we'll start with Boffins. And this one's interesting because when I hear the word boffin, I think of a scientist or some other technical expert, a computer boffin or something like that. The OED, though, gives two definitions, neither of which predate Tolkien's first use of the name. There's a meaning I'd never heard before, elderly naval officer, and that dates back to 1941. And then there's the scientist technician meaning that actually only dates back to 1945. But Tolkien used the word boffin, or the name boffin, in an early draft of The Lord of the Rings that was written in 1937. Now, thanks to Hammond and Skull for pointing me to Joseph Wright's English Dialect Dictionary, which records a Nottinghamshire word, boffin, B-O-F-I-N, so just one F, meaning dolt or dullard. But in this case, boffin actually appears to be an anglicized spelling of their actual Westron name. Now, you remember me talking about Ranugad Galbasi, better known as Hamfast Gamgee, a couple of weeks back. Well, here's Tolkien in Appendix F along with similar notes. There remained one or two older names of forgotten meaning, and these I have been content to anglicize in spelling as Took for T-U-K or Boffin for B-O-P-H-U-N. Grub, Tolkien says, is meant to recall the English verb grub, dig, root in the ground. Perfect name for the auctioneers who tried to sell Bilbo's belongings at the Inn of the Hobbit, Messrs. Grubb, Grubb, and Burrows. Now, Bilbo's paternal grandmother, that would be Bungo's mother, was Laura Grubb before she married Mungo Baggins. Chub, according to the nomenclature, was used because its immediate association in English is with the adjective chubby, round and fat in bodily shape. That's just the beginning of a trend, let me just say that. The Chubbs are related via Bilbo's maternal grandfather. The old Took married Adamanta Chubb and had 12 kids with her, including the 3 remarkable daughters we've talked about before. Now, Bolger, it turns out, is a little trickier to find. The entry in the nomenclature that mentions it is actually for the entry Budgeford. Now, there, Tolkien says that Bolger and Bolger occur as surnames in England. Whatever their real origin, they are used in the story to suggest that they were, in origin, nicknames referring to fatness, tubbiness. Well, Bracegirdle is, as I'm sure you will not be shocked to learn, used with similar intent. As the nomenclature tells us, it is used in the text, of course, with reference to the hobbit tendency to be fat, and so to strain their belts. I'm beginning to feel called out, and to not like belts. Anyway, Brockhouses come from the Old Country word brock, meaning badger, which comes from Old English brock, plus the word house, because as the nomenclature points out, the brock, that is the badger, builds complicated and well-ordered underground dwellings. Okay, good bodies. Well, here I thought maybe we'd get away from the fat shaming of hobbits, but actually no. It's derived from Old English god, meaning good, and bodig, meaning frame or trunk of an animal. As Hammond and Skull suggest, Tolkien may have meant to suggest, again, a sense of corpulence. Hornblowers is, according to the nomenclature, evidently an occupational surname. Now, Hammond and Skull point us to a dictionary of English surnames in which we read, in the Middle Ages, workmen were called to work by the ringing of bells or by a horn. So, hornblowers sure had to get up early. Finally, there is Proudfoot. In a dictionary of English surnames, we're told that this means one who walks with a haughty step. But Tolkien's suggestion in the text is, of course, that it's based on a physical characteristic. As we'll read later in the chapter, his feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table. Well, folks, that is it for today's Word Nerd Wednesday. Come back next week as we water the wide, wild, wonderful world of words weekly on Wednesdays. And if there is a word that you want to know more about, please let me know by emailing Barnum at theprancingponypodcast.com. That's actually something I've never heard from any of you about. I mean, I've gotten suggestions on what to read. I've gotten a lot of mailbag questions, but not once have I gotten anybody saying, hey, I'd like to see a Word Nerd Wednesday on this. So please send that in. Now, please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and more. Join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times for Third Age Thursday. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and please follow or subscribe on your podcast apps, and follow at Tolkien Times on all your social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.